Week 2 of the NFL season is officially in the books. So let's go ahead and get straight into it with our NFL Week 2 roundup. Moving straight into it, the Cowboys defeating the Jets 30-10 on Sunday. I'm going to pass it off to G here first. What was your initial reaction and thoughts to this game?
Look, I think it was just another impressive win by the Cowboys. But the main takeaway from this game was the performance of Dak Prescott, because as impressive as their week 1 victory against the New York Giants were, there were still questions that we both asked about Dak Prescott, because how do you score 40 points with no touchdowns? It was mostly a defensive clinic from their defense, which we know the Cowboys to have. This game was no different. Their defense was still all world. But you saw a little bit of a Dak sighting. 31 for 38 completion rate. That's pretty good. 255 yards with 2 touchdowns. That's what you want to see, because look, they're not, MVP numbers here, but this Cowboys team does not need a top 3, top 5 quarterback to get to where they want to be. They just need Dak to be Dak. They just need, a guy to get them by, almost like a game manager type, because this defense, I don't know how it's getting better. It's just how it is. And look, the Jets, they're no slouches. They have a great defense. I mean, they're touted as one of the best defensive teams in the league, and Dak was able to do a good little number on them. And you saw a little bit of a good game from CeeDee Lamb, 11 receptions, 143 yards. Tony Pollard wasn't was a little exciting there. He played decent, but overall, I was impressed by the Cowboys offense, because that's the question with the Cowboys. As much as I think they're a great team, the thing that worries me about them the most is how consistent can their offense score. Because when it gets time to the playoffs, it gets more vastly difficult, because you're going against the best teams in the league. So it was a good thing. I think they're taking definitely steps in the right direction, and it's something to be happy about.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I would reiterate a lot of what you said. I think this game, it kind of is a step in the right direction for the Cowboys, because like you said, there is no question how good this defense is. They proved it again on Sunday. I mean, we all know how good this defense is, led by Micah Parsons, 11 from heaven. I mean, nothing really has to be said about this defense. We know how good they are. One of, if not the best defense in the NFL. But the big question mark always about the Cowboys is Dak Prescott and this offense. And obviously, the Jets, like you said, very good defensive team. They lost Aaron Rodgers, but that has nothing to do with their defense. Their defense is still very, very good. And Dak did what he needed to do. The most important thing that I see here, 0 turnovers, 0 interceptions. That's the most important thing here. If Dak does not turn the ball over, this Cowboys team is going to be very difficult to beat. All they need to do is basically what Dak did on Sunday. If he can put up these types of numbers consistently, the Cowboys are going to be extremely, extremely difficult to beat. Because with that defense, they're going to hold most teams under 24 points. That's just the reality of it. I mean, if you're playing Miami, if you're playing Kansas City, a top offensive team, it's going to be difficult. But this Cowboys team is right there with them. They are that good on defense, where they can hold any team in the league to potentially under 24 points on any given Sunday. That's how good this defense is. It's going to be very difficult to score 30 on the Cowboys. So if the Cowboys are able to score 30 like they did on Sunday, they're almost guaranteed to win. That's how good this defense is. So Dak just needs to do what he did on Sunday consistently, and this Cowboys team is going to be set. No doubt about it. This team is going to be a threat. But the main question mark always is just consistency. Yes, he did this on Sunday, but what is he going to do next week? What is he going to do the week after? Because with Dak, he'll have his highs, and you'll say, is he turning the corner? And then he'll have his lows, and it's be like back to reality. So we don't know what Dak is going to show up on a week-to-week basis. But if he finally has turned the corner, and this is going to be kind of the benchmark of consistency, this Cowboys team is going to be a threat going forward. Because, look, it's still early on in the NFL season. Teams are still, adjusting, getting better. So, you would hope, if you're a Cowboys fan, that this is going to be the Dak that you see from here on in. But, it's Dak. So I don't know how you can be 100% confident about that. But you just have to, sit there and kind of hope.
Yeah. And not to completely go over the Jets, but I mean, unfortunately, we covered this on week 1. As soon as Aaron Rodgers went out, their season ended. It was over. I mean, if you're pitching all your hopes on Zach Wilson, a guy who pulls up and gives you 3 interceptions, I mean, I really don't know what to say. I mean, it's super unfortunate, because we know how piped in ready the Jets are. They literally just need a game manager to be in the mix. Unfortunately, I don't know what they're gonna do.
but they don't even. If they had a game manager, they'd be a solid team. I mean,
They'd
they're
be
right
they'd be
there. With Aaron
they'd be
Rodgers, they
down.
were Super Bowl contenders. With a game manager, they would be in the mix.
They'd
With
be in the
Zach
mix.
Wilson, they were. I don't even think they're going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, they're not going to make the playoffs. God.
I mean, Zach Wilson is just terrible. We knew this, though. I mean, everyone was talking about
No one's
how
surprised, yeah.
everyone was talking about somehow potentially that Zach Wilson was going to turn the corner and be good because Aaron Rodgers taught him a little bit. There's no
He took him
teaching
under
that
his
can be done.
wing.
I mean, there's no amount of teaching that can be done. It doesn't matter who's teaching him. It could have Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Joe Montana, all teaching Zach Wilson, but it's not going to change the fact that he does not know how to play quarterback at the NFL level. He just can't do it. Like Shannon Sharp said, he couldn't play dead in a horror film. You know what I mean? That's just the reality of it. I mean, he just can't do it.
I mean, I don't know if he could play college ball, but it's not good. He's just lost every bit of confidence. And look, as much as a team want to, have faith, they know it. They know they don't trust this guy, and they know they're not going nowhere if this guy's at the helm.
Yeah, and if the Jets, if they have any chance of salvaging the season, they have to get somebody else. I know that the options aren't necessarily the best. I know that, whoever's available, whether you're getting Matt Ryan out of the commentary booth, whatever, it might not be the best option. It's not necessarily going to be, we're guaranteed to make the Super Bowl or anything like that, but it's going to be better than what you got. Anything is better than what you got. So if you're the Jets front office, if you're Salah, you have to be looking at this and saying, we have to get somebody. We need somebody else, because if we have Zach Wilson as our quarterback for the remainder of the season, we'd be lucky to win 6 games. That's the reality. We would be lucky to win 6 or 7 games. If you get somebody else, at least there's a slimmer of hope, a glimmer. But with Zach Wilson, there is no chance, no hope, nothing for this team. And ultimately, I think one of the biggest what ifs in this NFL season is going to be the Jets, because with Aaron Rodgers, we were talking about them being a Super Bowl contender right there in the mix. This team was that good. And now we're looking at it and we're saying this team would be lucky to win 6 or 7 games because of Zach Wilson. I mean, get him out of the league. Yeah, I mean, get him to the XFL. Like, it's time to go.
It's time to go to XFL.
It's time to go. The XFL is calling. That's the reality, I think, for the Jets. But I think, potentially moving back to the Cowboys here, the final question that I wanted to ask about the Cowboys, I think we may have touched on it a little bit, but it just kind of comes down to the fact here. Look, when you're talking to the Cowboys, you know where the expectations are. You know what Jerry Jones wants. He wants to get them back to the promised land, to a Super Bowl. But at first, I think even the NFC Championship game would be nice, seeing as how long it's been since they have been there. So the question I'm going to pose to you is, after the 2-0 start, after the win against the Jets, do you view this Cowboys team as a legitimate Super Bowl contender?
I think you have to. I think it's a bit early to say, but we can only go off from what we've seen, and what we've seen is just obviously they're known for their great defense, but we also seen that can still kind of have those flashes of, he can maybe be consistent. And I think the defense is just too good for them not to be contenders. And they don't have someone as bad as a Zach Wilson at quarterback. They have somebody who is at least, middle of the pack. I mean, and some people like to call him middle of the pack Dak, but realistically, that's all you need when you have this level of defense. I mean, when you have ball hawks at the corners like they do, you're gonna be in a lot of games, and you have obviously 11 from heaven, feasting. Micah and the Marauders there. You're gonna win a lot of football games, and they're always going to be in the mix. The only thing I think the more bigger question is a lot of people are going to say, yeah, the Cowboys are contenders. How many people are going to say, yeah, the Cowboys are going to win the Super Bowl? To me, that's the more bigger thing, because I feel that that's a thing a lot of people can say about many teams. It's something that gets thrown around. So, oh yeah, these are contenders. But how many people are going to stand by and say, yep, I have the Cowboys winning it all? Because me personally, I don't. I see them as in the mix. Obviously out of respect for the defense. But when we're talking about getting what Jerry Jones really wants here, he doesn't want to be in the mix. He wants that. He wants a trophy. He wants to go all the way. And I don't think they're there yet.
Yeah. Well, look, I have to agree. I think by definition of contenders, you'd be crazy not to have the Cowboys in the mix of a contender, because you look at this defense and you look at what we've seen so far this season, you have to consider them contenders. They are in the mix. They are one of the best teams in the NFL. I mean, look, if Dak is able to do what he did on Sunday consistently, like I said earlier, this team, they are going to be right there. They are one of the best teams in the league. The question is Dak's consistently. Is he going to be able to do this consistently? And yes, the Jets have a very good defense, and he had no turnovers. He needs to do this consistently. That's what I need to see from Dak for me to say, yes, this team can actually win the Super Bowl. But until I see it consistently from Dak, I'm not going to go as far to say as I think the Cowboys team will actually win the Super Bowl or even make it, because right now I would take the 49ers over them. So yes, they're contenders. Yes, they're in the mix, but I am nowhere near close enough to being ready to say, yes, this team is going to win the Super Bowl. This team is even going to make the Super Bowl coming out of the NFC, because I'm not ready to do that yet. I would pick the 49ers over them as of right now. I have more faith in them, more confidence in them compared to the Cowboys, as to where I just have to go based on history here. What I've seen, Dak in the playoffs, we know what's going to happen. We know what's going to happen. Dak in the playoffs. Go look it up. What we've seen is what's going to happen again. History repeats itself. It has repeated itself. Dak in the playoffs is going to choke. So I have to stand by that until I see otherwise. And I just don't think Dak can be consistent enough to take this team to a Super Bowl, because yes, they have the defense, but what it comes down to ultimately is the quarterback play. You have to have a quarterback that is playing at a high level come playoff time. Yes, Dak can play at a high level, but when it matters most, he shrinks in the big moments. So that's why I'm not ready to say this Cowboys team is my favorite to win the Super Bowl, because they're good enough, but I can't say it. I'm not ready to do that.
I would agree. And I think before we close this out, there's actually something I wanted to ask, and I almost forgot to ask you, because there was something going around Twitter that, CeeDee Lamb had a decent game. He went for 11 receptions for a buck 43. But usually when receivers have a decent game, usually look at the opposing team's corner. And a lot of people were questioning Sauce Gardner, as he didn't line up many times against CeeDee. I mean, realistically, he only lined up against him once. And it was for one incompletion. But a lot of Cowboys fans were basically, taking the piss out of him for, basically not demanding the matchup, not going to the best receiver. And it's something I started to notice too, that, I mean, you would expect the best corner on your team to take the best receiver, because that's just what has to be done. You have to shut down the best offensive weapon on the other team. And that's something that has been kind of called into question. And I wanted to get your opinion on that.
Well, look, no doubt about it. I don't know necessarily who to blame, whether it's at the Jets coaching staff or Sauce Gardner, but whoever it is, Sauce needs to be demanding that he guards the other team's best receiver every single game, every single snap that he's out there on the field. That has to be the reality. If Sauce is the guy that he says he is, Sauce says that he's the best corner in the league. Even if you don't want to go that far, I don't think obviously he's the best corner in the league. He's a top 5 corner in this league. If you're that good, if you're that guy that you say that you are, you have to be guarding the other team's best receiver every single down, every single play that you're out there on the field. That's the reality. You take a guy, Jalen Ramsey, for example. Jalen Ramsey, if he's out there on the field, he is not going to go a snap not guarding the other team's best receiver. It's just not going to happen. The best have to guard the best. Look at CeeDee Lamb. He put up a buck 43 against the Jets. And yes, the one time that they were matched up against each other, it was an incompletion. He didn't get the reception. So, we don't know what would have happened if Sauce guarded him the whole game. But why wasn't he guarding him the whole game? Why are you putting somebody that is worse than you on a guy that is the Cowboys' best receiver? Sauce is the best corner on the Jets. That is the reality. We all know this to be true. Sauce is the guy. He's one of the leaders of that defense. So he should be taking it upon himself as a leader of the team, saying, yes, CeeDee Lamb, we know how good CeeDee Lamb is. We know how good he can be. I'm going to guard that guy. I got it. That's what leaders do. Leaders take the other team's best player and say, I got that guy. So I don't know who to blame, whether it's, a scheme, whether it's the coaching, or saying, we want to switch it up. We want to give CeeDee Lamb different looks. I don't know. Or if it's Sauce, maybe he was scared. I don't know. But if Sauce is the guy that he says he is, he should be demanding guarding the other team's best receiver. And, I don't think if Sauce was guarding CeeDee Lamb, he would have put up those numbers. I don't think it would have happened. I mean, I don't think Dak would have even targeted CeeDee Lamb as much.
Yeah.
Because he knows, Sauce is respected across the league. I mean, he's a great player. So to me, it's a bit of a head scratcher, because I don't know who to blame. I don't think Sauce is the type of guy to shy away from that matchup. So I think it has to be the coaching thing. And I did see a report after the game that Sauce is now demanding that he gets that matchup against the best receiver most of the time, which is what we need to see. That's what, the Jets should be doing. That's what they should have been doing the whole time. So now finally, we might get to see that going forward. And yes, maybe his statistics might go down a little bit, because, he's going to be guarding the best of the best players. That happens, but we know it doesn't change the fact that we know how good Sauce is, so the best have to guard the best. I think that's my opinion, and also the reality.
Yeah. I mean, I would completely agree. I mean, other than that, I would be, I don't know, who's really in his circle, but he really cannot be, on social media, basically pulling a Kevin Durant, getting in arguments with Cowboys fans. I mean, it's kind of, and then basically disabling your account. I mean, it makes you look soft here. I mean, look, do all your talking on the field, because that's what people want to see. I mean, the people are questioning your game. Your game is getting questioned. So you have to show it, because like you said, you're the best corner on your team. You should be taking the best receiver on your team. And I think, I like you said, I don't know necessarily who to blame. I don't think Sauce Gardner is scared of anybody. I think that's you don't get to this level being scared of anything. I think it's just a bit of, ignorance to the, on both sides, because the coaches are letting him line up to where he wants to, but it's not really your choice. Sauce, you don't get to line up where you want to. You have to line up where the best player is, and you should be seeking the best player, because you look to other corners like Patrick Surtain, or even like Jalen Ramsey. That's a given. You know what they're gonna do. They're gonna get the best player, and I think it could be a little bit of that. Like you said, his statistics might not be as great, because look, how many times have we seen Jalen Ramsey questioned and called into, how good of a corner he is, because you see him guarding the best. I mean, I remember the opener of last year when Diggs cooked him. And look, Stephon Diggs is one of the best receivers in the league. I mean, arguably last year he was a top 3 receiver. And no matter what, and I don't care what sport it is, a great offense is going to beat great defense every single time. Every single time. And being a corner is the hardest thing in the league. I mean, there's nothing harder than being a corner, especially when you're going against these elite freak of natures at the wide receiver. It's just how it is. But with Sauce Gardner, he's too gifted not to be able to match up against him. And I do agree that Stephon Diggs, I'm gonna say that. Oh God, I don't want to get his brother here. Oh. And no, I don't want to get it. Yeah, Trevon Diggs. Trevon Diggs is another guy who's in that mix, who also doesn't shy away, even though we see him not as great. He's not on the level of a Sauce Gardner. He still takes that initiative as a leader of the team.
Yeah.
So that's just something that we have to see. And he's still young. I mean, he's still a young player. I mean, we might be expecting too much leadership out of a very young player, but I think that's a good learning thing for him to have, to understand that now that you're highly respected in the league, you're seen as one of the best, you have to demand the best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. And if he is the guy that he says he is on social media, he should be seeking that from here on in. And ultimately, that's what I hope to see. It's kind of what I expect to see now after the report that said, that's what's going to happen. I mean, we'll see. Mm-hmm. I think it's a big talking point going forward. We'll have to see what the Jets kind of do next game, because if nothing changes, then you start to raise your eyebrow and say, what's going on here? I just don't. It wouldn't quite make a lot of sense. So I think that's something to keep an eye on next week going into week 3.
Yeah, and like no one wants to see a freaking Sauce line up against Michael Gallup here, bro. Like no one's tuning in to watch that shit.
Yeah. I mean, look, Michael Gallup only had 1 catch for 3 yards. You know what I mean?
Look, he was guarding somebody. It just wasn't the main guy. It wasn't number 88.
Yeah, and that's who he needed to be guarding. I mean, look, I don't think it would have made a difference in the result of the game because of the fact Jets have Zach Wilson. I mean, there's no amount of defense that
it wasn't going to stop the 3 interceptions. Yeah, there's not going to stop the 3 interceptions. But
it's the premise. Let's just assume Aaron Rodgers was still there. I mean, we're talking about this team as a Super Bowl contender. Sauce would need to be guarding the best team's receivers. If this team was going to truly contend, like many people thought. So I just think, this is something that's, a story to follow. I think it's something that's going to, change in the coming weeks here.
Yeah.
But moving forward into another game, Sunday Night Football, huge talking point across the league. The Dolphins beating the Patriots 24-17. I know you want me to take the lead on this one, seeing as it's my team, so no problem doing that. Look, this game, we all knew that the Dolphins, we knew how good they were after week 1. I said that this game against the Patriots was going to be tough. On the road, Sunday Night Football, going against Bill Belichick, going against this Patriots defense, I knew it was going to be tough. I mean, look, when you're playing, division rivals on the road, week 2, it's always going to be tough. The Patriots crowd was going crazy. We all knew it was going to be a difficult game. I did not expect this to be, a blowout. I consider the Dolphins, better than the Patriots. I don't see the Patriots as really doing anything this year. But I knew it was going to be a tough game. So to get this result, I'm very impressed because this was a bit of a more scrappy game. I think that this game showed that the Dolphins can win in many different ways. And I think that's why I'm very impressed by what I saw. Look, it wasn't Tua's best game. It wasn't the type of game we saw in week 1. He did have only 1 touchdown, 1 interception. what the Patriots were able to do on defense was impressive. They basically bottled up Tyreek Hill, which is extremely difficult to do. As we all know, I view Tyreek Hill as the most dominant receiver in this league, the most dynamic receiver in this league, arguably the most difficult player to guard, in the league, any position, whatever. So what they were able to do was impressive, holding Tyreek Hill to 5 receptions for 40 yards. Obviously, he did get a touchdown, but basically bottling up to that's extremely impressive. That goes out to Bill Belichick. That's why this game was always going to be tough. But getting this win in the way that they were able to do it, leaning on the defense, because the offense was good, but they were not firing on all cylinders. A lot of that comes down to the scheme and what Bill Belichick was able to do to prepare for this Dolphins team. But the Dolphins had to lean on their defense. And after week 1, I said that the Dolphins defense is going to have to play better going forward. I expected them to, because of the fact, look, it was week 1. Vic Fangio was still implementing his system. There's still, some injuries. We still don't have Jalen Ramsey. We didn't have him in this game. I'm not going to see him till later in the season. But I figured this Dolphins team was going to get better. But what I saw against a Patriots offense that is still solid, Mac Jones has been playing solid. I mean, Mac Jones in this game, I was still impressed by him. I was very impressed with what I saw from the defense, because we knew how good the offense was, but I needed the defense to step up. You can't give up 34 points every single week and expect to win. As good as the Dolphins offense is, you can't concede 34 points every week. It just can't happen. So I was very impressed with that. I mean, look, ultimately, I think that, this game, it just shows to me that the Dolphins can win on a variety of different levels. And that is the most impressive thing. That's, to me, the sign of a true contender. And I think going forward, we all view the Dolphins as one of the best teams in the AFC. They are a contender. So I was impressed by this game because of the fact, on primetime, the lights are the brightest, playing the Patriots, playing Bill Belichick, playing this Patriots defense. They have arguably a top 5, top 10 defense in this league. I was impressed by what I saw and, the way that they won it. Not necessarily leaning as much on the passing game, but showing us they have the rushing attack, showing us Raheem Mostert, 18 carries, 121 yards, 2 touchdowns, leaning on that defense when it mattered most, because the Patriots had a chance to actually tie this game up in the fourth quarter. They were making a bit of a comeback, and the Dolphins defense held strong. I give a lot of credit to Mike McDaniel, Vic Fangio, and this Dolphins defense. And, you're not going to play many tougher coaches and defenses than the Patriots. So I think, this, speaks volumes about how good this Dolphins team is. 2 games on the road to start off the season. They're 2-0. Now they go and they play the Broncos next week. You have to be feeling good about this Dolphins team. And I think, we'll talk about it in a little bit here, but, you'd be crazy not to view them as one of the best teams in the league.
Well, I would have to agree with a lot of the points. I echo a lot of what you say. I mean, playing the Patriots away from home is very difficult outing, because they have a great defense. They have a top 5 defense, but they also have Mac Jones, who's coming off a very good week 1 game. A lot of people were giving him a lot of credit, and he didn't have a bad game. This one, it was a bit more, obviously not to the level of week 1, but I mean, he at least was able to basically cancel out Tua. And I think they kind of dueled to a bit of a stalemate. But like you said, it came down to the defense. It was a very scrappy game, and that's one of the main takeaways that any Dolphins fan should be taking, like you did, that the Dolphins can win in different ways, because the only way to succeed and be a real contender is that you can't just be a one-trick pony. You just can't, feed Tyreek, only Tyreek, led by Tyreek. That's a lot of the things that are said about the Dolphins, that they go as Tyreek goes. I mean, if Tyreek doesn't have a good game, most likely the Dolphins are going to lose. And that's not true, because I'm not sure, we might have cursed Tyreek a little bit here, giving him a little bit too much flowers week 1, saying I'm the most unguardable player. He's got to quiet this game, a little quiet. Mm-hmm. But that's why you have players like a Jalen Waddle step up and take a little bit of that pressure off him, going for 86 yards. Unfortunately, I think he's in concussion protocol.
At the game, yeah.
He got injured, but I mean, overall, it was an impressive win from the Dolphins. And it did come down to their defense stepping up a bit more, which is what you want from them. Because they can't, like you said, give up more than 30 points a game, because that's not going to really take you very far. Mm-hmm. Because as much as they are definitely an offense-first team, no team is going to really contend and go all the way and win it all if they don't have a defense that's hanging around top 5. It doesn't have to be necessarily top 5, but they got to hang around there, and they got to play up to those moments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, I agree. I mean, look, I think in this current day NFL, you don't necessarily have to have a top 5 defense necessarily, like you said, but they have to be a solid defense that steps up when it matters the most. I mean, you look at the Chiefs, for example, we know how good offensively they were last season, for example, and they had a formidable defense, one that stepped up when it mattered most and got the job done, when the offense wasn't necessarily firing on all cylinders. That's kind of what I view this Dolphins team as. And actually, I mean, they have all the pieces in place to potentially be a top 5 defense if Vic Fangio is able to, figure out the scheme and get them firing on all cylinders once Jalen Ramsey comes back. I have no doubt that this Dolphins team has the pieces to potentially be a top 5 defense. And that's kind of scary because we know they're definitely a top 5 offense, even maybe top 3. Some would say top 1 offense. And, with a top 5 defense as well. I mean, this is why we're viewing this Dolphins team as potentially a top 3 team in the NFL right now because of how good on both sides of the ball they can be. And I think people are now starting to fully see that. People are starting to, open their eyes a little bit because after week 1, you say, yes, the Chargers have a good offense. They have good players. They have Justin Herbert, but 34 points, you're not going to win many football games playing like that. The defense, got cooked for week 1. Let's just be honest. They did save the Dolphins in the end, getting that stop. But, I mean, you can't give up 34 points and expect to win many games in the NFL. It's just a reality. Now, playing the Patriots, yes, their offense isn't as good as the Chargers, but, we got to see them getting pressure on the quarterback. We got to see them forcing turnovers. This is what we expect from a Vic Fangio-led defense. So now people are opening their eyes and saying, yeah, this Dolphins team, they're good on both sides of the ball. They're not just a one-trick pony. It's not just, feed the ball to Tyreek and let him cook. No, they can do different things. They can, win running the ball. You want to stop Tyreek Hill? You want to play, zone defense, basically 3 safeties like Patriots were doing at some points? Yeah, fine. We'll just give the ball to Raheem Mostert, let him cook. That's what we were doing. So I think it was a very impressive win on multiple aspects. And I think going forward, you have to feel very confident about what you saw from this Dolphins team, from week 1 and week 2.
Yeah, I would 100% agree.
And I think, we'll probably talk a little bit about their, going forward in the future in a little bit here. So, we won't necessarily have to bring that up now. So I think, unless you have any points that you wanted to make about the Patriots or, whatever, I think we can move forward into some of the biggest questions going forward in this NFL season.
Well, I think that's all. That's it for me on that one.
Okay. So obviously, look, week 2 is over, as we said earlier. So now we can go ahead and say, what team in the NFL this week made the biggest statement?
I would have to side right now with the Cowboys, just because they played the Jets, the Jets who have an absolutely spectacular defense, touted as one of the best defensive teams in the league, and they were able to beat them soundly. It wasn't very close as people definitely thought. Obviously, a lot of that goes into Aaron Rodgers not being there, but still, it takes a lot to do what they did. To score 30 points on that Jets defense, it's not easy. It's not an easy thing to do. And especially, I take a little bit of account of I already gave an account of the defense, but mostly the Cowboys defense is just otherworldly. I mean, they've gotten better. And I don't want to beat a dead horse here because we've talked a lot about the Cowboys defense and how good it is, but they're just every week you're just reminded how good this defense is. So, I mean, that's what I would say is my clear week 2, biggest statement. Again, I would say almost back to back because they were the week 1 statement as well.
Yeah, they made a big statement on week 1, basically
70-10 versus New York teams. Jesus.
Yeah. I didn't even notice that. Okay, so yeah, look, my biggest statement team out of week 2 for me has to be the Dolphins. Yes, it wasn't necessarily as big of a gap, beating the Jets by 20 like the Cowboys did, but the Dolphins beating the Patriots on Sunday Night Football. Yes, I think the biggest question marks were about this Dolphins defense, and I think the fact that they were able to hold the Patriots to 17 points, slamming the door shut at the end. That's a statement. We're not sure what we were necessarily expecting, from this Vic Fangio-led defense after week 1, giving up 34 points. We said, a bit of a question mark there. I kind of had faith that, being a fan, but I think many people had question marks, what is this Dolphins defense? Is this Dolphins defense going to hold back this team? Because we know how good the offense is, but is the defense going to hold back this team? But I think they kind of slammed the door shut on that, showing what they can do, but getting pressure to the quarterback, creating turnovers. That's what we need to see from this defense, what you need to see from any defense. And obviously, I think why this was the biggest statement was the fact that the Dolphins proved that they can win in many different ways. Tyreek Hill did not have a good game. They actually contained Tyreek Hill. Bill Belichick, he said, this is what he does. He takes away your best option and makes you beat him in a different way. This is what he's always done. Right? The Patriots are typically very difficult to beat because he zones in on your best option and says, you're not going to beat us with that. So he said, look, Tyreek Hill, I respect you. You're not going to beat us this game. It's going to have to be someone else. Yeah, okay. Dolphins give the ball to Raheem Mostert. Let him do his thing. Yes, lean on the defense. That's what we were able to do. So I think showing the fact that we can win in multiple different ways, that's why this was the biggest statement. Yes, there were some other statement wins across the league this week. But for me, I look at this and I say this was the biggest statement, not necessarily because it was a big gap, because it was a blowout, but the fact that it was a close game, away from home, a Sunday Night Football, all the lights are on you, and you're able to get a win against Bill Belichick, against this Patriots team. That's why I have to see this as a big statement. Winning in the way that nobody would have expected it. If you told somebody before the game that Tyreek Hill was only going to have 40 yards, you would have said, oh, wow, the Patriots are going to win that game. That's what you would have said. Oh, Tua, he threw for less than 300 yards too. He threw an interception. Oh, so they figured out the Dolphins. No, not quite. They were able to win in a different way. And I think that's why, for me, I have to view that as the biggest statement win in week 2.
I mean, it's not a bad shout. I mean, I'm a bit surprised, but not a bad shout.
Okay, so obviously through 2 weeks here, what do you think the most impressive team in the NFL has been so far?
I mean, it feels weird to talk about them back to back, but we might be the same. I'm saying the Dolphins. I'm quite surprised by the Dolphins just because there was a lot of not surprised, but more impressed. I'd say because that is actually a different point, but. I'm more impressed with the Dolphins just because there was questions about, Tua's health. How healthy would Tua be able to stay? He was in the offseason, he was learning how to fall. I mean, this guy, I don't know about this guy, but he was able to come out and obviously had that outstanding week 1 against the Chargers, a guy he's compared to a lot. Justin Herbert was able to outplay him in a great win. And then, like you said, like the points you just made against the Patriots, you go play Bill Belichick, a guy who's known to take away your best weapons and say, okay, you have to beat us a different way. And they really made it a scrappy game, and they won a very, not the prettiest game in the world, but they got the win. They found a way to win. To make a long story short, they had to go there. They didn't play that great offensively, but the defense stepped up. Obviously Nick Fangio's having a little bit more time to implement how he wants to play, and it's very impressive. I mean, to see the Dolphins do well, and I see them going winning their next game against the Broncos and going 3-0. I mean that's fairly impressive. I mean, I don't know how many people had the Dolphins going starting out the season 3-0.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, you took the words straight out of my mouth. I mean, not to beat a dead horse here, but for me, the most impressive team in the NFL
I couldn't think of another one. I literally couldn't.
The most impressive team in the NFL so far after week 2 for me has to be the Dolphins. Obviously 2-0. Outdueling Justin Herbert in week 1, putting up a historic game. Tua, now, as of right now, is the MVP front runner. And obviously, we knew that this offense was going to be good. We knew Tyreek Hill was going to be, Tyreek Hill. We knew Jalen Waddle was Jalen Waddle. But this Dolphins team also, they have a running game. They have a defense. They can beat you in multiple different ways. They just showed that on Sunday Night Football against the Patriots. They can win scrappy. They can win, throwing the ball. They can win running the ball. They can win a defensive battle. This team, they have it all. They don't have a weakness, I don't think. I mean, even on, I would say the biggest weakness potentially is special teams. The kicker. That potentially is their biggest weakness right now. And, that's in a kind of a good position to be in. If your biggest weakness is your kicker, who I don't think Jason Sanders is that bad, but, he's not necessarily one of the best kickers in the league. That's a good position to be in because if you take away Tyreek Hill, you still have faith that this team can get it done. If the defense isn't firing on all cylinders like in week 1, you still have faith that this offense is going to be able to do enough to get you over the line. So, yes, Bill Belichick took away Tyreek Hill. We were still able to get the win. So, if you're a opposition team, you have to sit there. If you're playing the Dolphins, what do? You can't take away their best option. You can't hope that, the offense doesn't fire on all cylinders. I don't necessarily see how you game plan for this Dolphins team because now after week 2, they've shown they can beat you in so many different ways. It's very difficult. And I think that's why, this Dolphins team is a Super Bowl contender. They're one of the best teams in the AFC. They don't really have a weakness. And I liked what I saw, from these defensive pieces. I mean, We traded for Bradley Chubb last year. People said, he hasn't been that guy. He hasn't been the guy we expected him to be. Week 2, he showed that. So if all of these guys that are turning the corner, especially on the defensive side of the ball, Jalen Ramsey still to come back, and this Dolphins team is going to be scary. And as of right now, even as they are, for me, has to be the most impressive team in the NFL because there was a lot of question marks coming into the season, and they basically silenced all the critics. And you could say, no doubt, I think everybody has them in their top 3 teams. Everybody has to have them in their top 3 teams. Whether, some people would have them 1, 2, 3. They're a top 3 team in this league as of right now. I think everybody can agree on that. So that they're very impressive.
Yeah, and I mean the only questions I would ask because against the Dolphins, because I wouldn't necessarily say, oh, they don't have any weaknesses, because I don't think they've gone against a true gunslinging quarterback with a not like a top 5 quarterback that has a top 5 receiver. That's the only, because as far as not having Jalen Ramsey, their secondary might be something you can get at with an elite level quarterback. We have yet to see it. We're going to see it later on this season, but I don't think that's necessarily a problem, because if you want to get into a shootout with the Dolphins, that's the one team you kind of don't want to do that, because you're going to have to beat them. Like you're going to have to kind of play them how the Patriots play them. If they're playing that like them defensively, take away their best weapon, and hopefully that you can get at them on defense. But
yeah,
overall, I think an honorable mention would be the Cowboys, but it was close. Let's just say it was close.
Yeah, definitely. I think the Cowboys are in there in that mix as the most impressive team. I mean, I'm kind of surprised you didn't say them, but I mean, there was a couple. I mean, the 49ers as well, impressive, but I don't think the 49ers were as impressive because we kind of expected it.
Yeah, I expected
you expected it. Yeah, I think with the Cowboys and the Dolphins, you necessarily didn't expect it quite as much. I mean, you might have expected it, but you didn't say, 100% confidence. And with the 49ers, you expected them to beat the Rams. You expected them to do what they've been doing. We all know how good they are. Maybe we'll talk about them in a little bit here. So obviously, moving away necessarily from the teams, we'll get back to them in a little bit here. But the most disappointing quarterback so far through 2 weeks, who do you think it is?
I think this one might be a little bit surprising because, I mean, a lot of people will probably pick a quarterback that's on a team that's 0-2. But I'm going to have to go with Deshaun Watson because, look, he has the most guaranteed money, $230 million guaranteed. And if you're getting paid that, there's a certain stature of play that us fans expect from you. And I just haven't seen it, because as much as other people, because I already have an inkling of what you're going to say, because we might have spoken about it. Deshaun Watson had a full training camp. This guy has been, he had a full off season with this team. Not like he doesn't know, he's new, that he just came back on suspension. He played, 6 or 5 games last season. This isn't a full, pulling him off the couch here. He's got time to work with his Browns team, and this Browns team, it's not horrible. I mean, it's got a good defense. They basically won the first game versus the Bengals purely on their defense, because, look, Deshaun Watson played Joe Burrow, but it wasn't a shootout. It wasn't like, Deshaun Watson completely outclassed Joe Burrow. They both played poor. They both just play, Deshaun Watson has been playing a bit almost at best a game manager. And when you look at the Steelers, I mean, my God, he just looked, like you say, it looked like he was running in cement. He just looks slow. He looks big. He looks lethargic. I mean, I don't really necessarily blame him for the interception. I mean, that's the pick 6 was unfortunate because it bounces off, his receiver's hands, but he just didn't do enough to win. Like there's certain things where, he's making plays where you're scratching your head. So what are you doing? I mean, he gets the ball, he stutters, and then he runs, and he tries to rush, but one, he's slow, and then he just immediately gets caught up, and then it fully puts the defense back on the field, and now you're wearing out your defense. It's just a mixture of things. It's not what you expect from Deshaun Watson. And look, we've talked about it. We're not expecting Deshaun Watson to look like, Houston, the guy that was a top 3. But we're expecting, if you're getting paid $230 million guaranteed dollars, to at least be top 5, top 7. Right now, I think his completion percentage is down with the likes of Zach Wilson. It's pretty low out of, I think, how many odd quarterbacks, 30 plus quarterbacks. He's in the 30s. For a guy that has 230, that's unacceptable, because I can't really find many excuses to give him, because look, sometimes I'll give players the benefit of the doubt if there's something going wrong, maybe It's a new system, and yeah, it is still a bit of a new system, but you've had the time to to get with your receiver core. Nothing's that you have weapons. I mean, we see the weapons that they have, and we know that defense, led by Myles Garrett and them lot. They're very good. Obviously, it's unfortunately they lost Nick Chubb, a very vital piece of their offense. But I mean, now a lot more pressure is going to be on Deshaun Watson, and now he's going to have to answer these questions because now you don't have Nick Chubb. A lot of the pressure is going to go on you now. They need you to be the $230 million guy they paid you for.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because, I mean, look, maybe I gave them the kiss of death by saying, maybe they're my dark horse for the Super Bowl. And then, all this happens. But I just want to see Deshaun Watson get back to a little bit to where he was at, because it's unfortunate to see a guy as talented as him not live up to his standards.
Yeah. I mean, look, Deshaun Watson wasn't going to be the guy that I said, but I do want to reiterate a little bit of what you said, because watching that game yesterday against the Steelers, I sat there and I said, Deshaun Watson looks slow. Like, he runs the ball, and I'm sitting there and I said, why does he look slow? This is not the Deshaun Watson that I remember. I mean, I am not expecting him to return to Houston, Deshaun Watson. I'm not expecting that. I don't think anybody was really expecting that, but I don't understand how he's gotten so much slower. I mean, he used to be fast. I mean, he used to be a threat on the run, but he's just not anymore. And, the statistics are what they are. Obviously, didn't have the best week one. This game, not necessarily terrible, but not great either. Not what you expect when you're getting the money that Deshaun Watson is getting.
Too many 3-and-outs.
Yeah,
Too many.
Look, like you said, the pressure is going to be on Deshaun Watson even more so now due to the unfortunate injury with Nick Chubb. But he has the weapons. This Browns team, I agreed with you after week one. They had the potential to be a potential dark horse, for contending for the Super Bowl, because they have a very good defense. If Deshaun Watson returned to, what we kind of saw at one point with Houston, they have Amari Cooper, they have Elijah Moore, they had Nick Chubb, they have good weapons. I
always forget their tight ends, and it's
and Njoku. They have good weapons. But Deshaun Watson, he's kind of the reason I think he's could potentially be holding this team back right now. That's the reality of it. So, I think it's a very good shout for him being the most disappointing quarterback so far, because, I mean, last night against the Steelers, he had above a 50% completion percentage, going 22 for 40. I think that's a 54% completion percentage. Come on, what are we talking about here?
It's some of the worst. It's almost the worst. If I'm not mistaken, it's the third worst out of all quarterbacks. The only people that are worse was Zach Wilson that I saw. I was like, oh my God, Jesus Christ. What's happening?
I just don't understand it, because, look, I understand, being away from the league for a little bit, you're not going to necessarily jump right back in and be a top 5 quarterback. I mean, I get that, but I just don't understand how you got so much slower. I mean, we're talking about.
So you keep hammering the point of him being slow
because I just sit there and I watch the. I said it multiple times watching him scramble, and I'm just like, he can't avoid pressure. Like, those Steelers defensive linemen were quicker than him. I understand maybe TJ Watt, he's faster.
TJ Watt, yeah. I mean,
but I'm talking about those interior defensive linemen. I mean, 350, 360-pound big boys, faster than Deshaun Watson. I'm like, what? I just don't quite understand it. And then, another thing yesterday that I don't know if you necessarily picked up on it, but he got a personal foul, and then he's over here pushing the ref. What is going on in this guy's head? He should have been ejected. He literally should have gotten ejected. I don't know why he wasn't ejected, because typically if you push the ref, you put your hands on the ref, you get ejected. He wasn't. I don't know what was going through Deshaun Watson's head, but this is a 28-year-old guy. He still, should be in his prime. I'm not saying he needs to necessarily, be Houston Deshaun Watson right now, but he should be better than what he is. So I don't necessarily know what's gone wrong, but he needs to figure it out. He needs to figure it out quick, especially now without Nick Chubb. There's going to be a lot more pressure on him to carry this offense, because yes, they might sign a guy. Yes, they might bring back Kareem Hunt, but he's not Nick Chubb. So you need Deshaun Watson to be the guy that you paid him to be now more than ever, if you want to make the playoffs, if you want to be the team that you want to be, especially in a loaded AFC North, because, the Steelers just beat you. I just still don't think they're a great team, but they just beat you. I mean, that's the reality. They just beat you. Ravens, very good team, led by Lamar. The Bengals are not going to be this bad, you would assume, going forward, especially if Joe Burrow is healthy. I mean, we're going to talk about him in a second here, but you expect the Bengals to be better. If the Browns want to be the team that they want to be, they want to at least make the playoffs. Deshaun Watson is going to have to step up his game considerably because he just looked rattled yesterday. He looked a shell of himself. Just not what you expect for a guy that they're paying, $230 guaranteed dollars, $230 million guaranteed dollars.
Yeah, $230.
That wouldn't be that bad. But $230 million, that's pretty bad.
Okay, yeah.
But that's not even my most disappointing quarterback because there just so happens to be a guy in the same division who I'm considering to be more disappointing so far. I'm going to say Joe Burrow. Signing the big money record contract extension in the offseason. And so far this season, he hasn't been the MVP contender that we expected. He was right up there in the mix. I think he was the third betting favorite for MVP coming into the season. And now I look at this and I say, what has he done so far this season? I mean, that first game, 14 for 31, 82 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. I mean, that's pathetic. It's just pathetic. It was a disaster. It was a disgrace. And yes, he might have not had a full training camp or whatever excuse you want to make for him. It's unacceptable. It cannot happen. Less than 50% completion percentage, 82 yards. It's unacceptable. It's a disgrace. I said it last week on the video. It can't happen. Then he follows it up this week. Yes, he was better. I mean, it's hard to do much worse than 82 yards. But 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. But the main thing is this Bengals team, they were in the championship game last year. They were in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. This team has high expectations. Joe Burrow just got the record contract extension. He's supposed to be an MVP front runner. He's supposed to be, that guy. So far this season, he has not been that guy. He's 22nd this season in QBR. And he's supposed to be an MVP front runner. For me, he has to be the most disappointing QB so far because he's been nowhere near what we expected. And yes, you can make the excuse that, he's coming off of the calf injury. He did re-aggravate the calf injury. And now he's uncertain if he's going to play next week. But 0-2, this Bengals team is too good to be 0-2. Yes, they were 0-2 last year and made the championship game, but this team is too good to be 0-2. And you lost to 2 division rivals. You lost to the Browns, who just lost to the Steelers, of all people. I mean, yes, I still think the Browns are a solid team, but you got embarrassed by them. Like, you got embarrassed, and then you lose to the Ravens. Yes, it was a close game, but Joe Burrow needs to play better. And now, obviously, I can't necessarily take the injury into account and saying that's why he's been the most disappointing, but he needs to fix this, and he needs to fix it fast because this Bengals team, they could go from bad to worse real quick. Because, yes, let's just say he doesn't play next week. This Bengals team could very easily be 0-3. And it's very difficult to come back from 0-3 to make the playoffs. It's very difficult. So I sit there and I say there's a lot of question marks around this Bengals team, a lot of question marks around Joe Burrow, and he needs to figure it out fast. And let's just say he does play in week 3. I don't know what Joe Burrow we're going to get because of the fact he's going to be playing through this calf injury. So I think the question is there as do you sit him out and let him fully recover, or do you try to play through it? Because, if you don't play through it, you could take the loss. And then, you're looking at it's going to be very difficult to, win this division because the Ravens have a chance to go 3. You could be 0-3. It's very difficult to make up that ground. There's not that many games in the NFL. It's not like the NBA. It's very difficult. So I think that there's a lot of question marks around the Bengals right now. But from what I've seen from Joe Burrow so far, even if he's playing through the injury, you have to consider him the most disappointing quarterback in the league because of the money he just got, MVP front runner, and his QBR is 22nd in the league, and he's been an average quarterback at best so far.
Look, I cannot agree with anything you said. I think your Joe Burrow bias is shining through here because just the fact that you're making a point that he's injured. Just because, though, as much as it's not a complete excuse, you can't, right him from every wrong because I was here week 1 saying, Joe Burrow, you have to play better. But you cannot watch Joe Burrow right now and say he's 100% football. He's in a football shape because he's not. Because he did not get a full camp. He did not get his full camp. And as much as people want to say, that doesn't really matter, at this level, it does. Because when you're playing the best teams, arguably in the world, you're playing division rivals, you have to be at your best. And you could have every weapon there, but if you're not 100%, it's hard to be there and make those plays. And Joe Burrow does not look 100%. He looks nowhere near it. And now he re-aggravates his injury. It's starting to get bad to worse. And because now there's questions as if he's going to play the next game. Look, I'm not gonna sit here and give him complete, excuse and just banish all the other ones because he didn't play horrible the second game, but it just wasn't of his standard. It was a bit more game managed type. It's just that he didn't do anything necessarily horrible, but we know the level Joe Burrow could play at. And yes, like you said, the Bengals were 0-2 last season, but the difference was Joe Burrow wasn't hurt, and now there's a lot of questions that what should they do? And I look at it as I would prefer they sit Joe Burrow out just because that's why you have backup quarterbacks for said reason. And you got to think the Bengals have the offensive weapons out the ass. I mean, they have Jamar Chase, they have T Higgins, they have Tyler Boyd. And look, I have Jamar Chase on fantasy. I want my guy to get some catches, man. I need some points here, and Joe Burrow's not doing that right now because he just doesn't look 100% in football shape. And I know I saw a lot of people throwing around that there's no getting healthier through the season. It's impossible to just get healthier through each game, week after week playing these games. That's why you have to sit him out. Hopefully that's enough time to get him at least back, to feeling more comfortable because look, he just doesn't look as mobile. He doesn't look as confident and poised in the pocket as we know Joe Burrow to be. But I mean, compared to everybody else in the league, I mean, you got guys like Justin Herbert. You got a guy that we even talk about, Russell Wilson. I mean, really? We're going to say Joe Burrow is more disappointing than all of them? And I think it's unfair to completely say, oh, look at the contract he signed because he signed that contract when he was still injured. I mean, he's not 100%. It's not like he's going to the season, fucking with zero anything, no excuses, no nothing. The fact that there's something there, it's a bit unfair to hold that over his head that, oh, look, you're the most paid quarterback because it's not unlike because you compare it to like the point I just made, Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson has none of these excuses and he has the most guaranteed money. He's not the highest paid, but it's the most guaranteed out of everybody. And he has zero excuses compared to Joe Burrow, who didn't get the luxuries of Deshaun Watson. He didn't get everything Deshaun had because he got injured in camp. But
all right.
I can't completely disagree. He hasn't been disappointing, but to label him the most out of everybody after I just named, I think 3 guys that have been way more disappointed than he have is disrespectful.
All right. Was or was he not an MVP candidate coming into the season?
Yes.
So are these MVP level numbers in any way, shape, or form? 41 for 72 through 2 games, 56.9% completion percentage, 304 yards, and then 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Are those MVP level numbers? I mean, that we're talking there's nowhere near, and the Bengals are 0-2. He put up 82 yards in the first game.
Yes,
for a player that just got a record contract extension. That is extremely disappointing.
From the snaps in the games that you've seen from Joe Burrow, does he look completely healthy? Is he 100% there? No. Like, it'd be different, like I said, if there was nothing. If it's just him shitting the bed, it's like, what is going on? There's question marks about what's going on. The questions that we're asking have an answer.
I mean, if you're out there on the field, that's what I have to judge you based on. What he's been out there on the field is what I have to judge him based on.
I get that because it's a lot that other thing. If you're healthy enough out there to play, you have to play the standard. But there are reasons. There is something. It's not like, this is completely coming out of nowhere. It's out of the blue. These are questions people had going into the season because they knew he missed the entirety. There was questions that he was even going to play at the start of the season. When he first got hurt in camp, we saw we sent it the tweet to each other, looking like he was going to be out for probably a couple of first weeks of the season. So it's like the fact that he's going out there and playing. Yeah, I get that. When you're out there, you have to play, but there's just too many, obvious reasons of why he's not playing to standard and to hold everything over his head when there's compared to other guys that are dramatically worse. I mean, I just don't get it.
I mean, look, the Bengals, to me, the reason why I can label him the most disappointing is due to the expectations, not only of him, but also the team. I don't have as high of expectations for the Browns and Deshaun Watson as I do Joe Burrow. When I look at Joe Burrow, I look at this Bengals team, I'm expecting Super Bowl contenders. I'm expecting Joe Burrow to play at an MVP level. I'm expecting him to play at the level of his contract. The contract that says, the record contract in NFL history. That's what I'm expecting. And whatever, if he's playing through an injury, obviously now he re-aggravated the injury. I don't know necessarily how much of it. Look, I don't know. Was he playing through that injury when he was putting up 14 for 31, 82 yards in week 1? They said it was healthy. They said he was healthy. He just re-aggravated it in week 2.
You can be healthy, but not completely say, there was no talks of him basically coming out of the game, but no one knows except Joe Burrow. No one knows. No one's ever gonna know.
And obviously he's not gonna talk about that.
If you watch that game, I'm just saying, if you watch the game, it's not normal Joe Burrow.
I mean, like I said, you would hope that this just comes down to the injury, because if it's not, then you got a way bigger conversation.
Yeah, then there's a bigger then we could talk. That's the difference here, because like I said, if it were like other quarterbacks that have been more disappointing, like the ones I named that were there the whole time, that have no inkling of an injury, or they look 100% fine, then we could sit down and have a conversation and say what's going on with Joe Burrow. But the fact that I can look at that, there's some things that he's a bit shaken up, and not to mention other things that go along with it. His offensive line's not the best. It's never been good. But the fact that he just doesn't look as mobile, he doesn't look as poised in the pocket as he normally does, tends me to believe that the injury is nagging him, that it's bothering him, that he's a little worried about it. It's in the back of his mind. And when you have those demons, you have those ghosts over your head, those things in the back of your mind, especially as a quarterback in the quarterback position, that is completely detrimental to your game.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's not going to, look, I kind of think you're kind of preaching to the choir here, because I think we're going to agree to disagree. I think with the expectations I have on Joe Burrow, even if he's playing through the injury, I would expect him to be better. But, to each their own, we'll have to leave that up to the comments. What do you think? Who's right? Who's wrong? Let us know in the comments. But I think obviously we can go ahead and move forward into one thing that I was looking forward to, because now, I think we've seen enough. It's only been 2 weeks, but we've seen enough to say that, who is the best teams in the NFL. So now we can go ahead and move forward into our top 5 teams in the NFL through 2 weeks based on what we've seen. So I'm going to go ahead and let you go first. Going from 5 to 1. Let's go ahead and hear your top 5 teams in the NFL through 2 weeks.
Okay, through 2 weeks, I would have to say number 5 starts with the Chiefs. I'll go Chiefs 5. 4, I'm going with the Eagles. 3, I'm going with the Dolphins. 2, I'm going with the Cowboys. And number 1, I'm rounding out with the San Francisco 49ers.
Do you want to talk us through a couple of your...
Talk us through? I thought you were going to go on yours, but okay. Number 5, I think it's just, it's more of respect to the Chiefs, just for the pure fact they are the defending Super Bowl champions. They would be a little bit higher in this list just for the pure fact of that, because we know how good Patrick Mahomes is. They were missing Travis Kelce in the first game, partial to the reason that we all think they lost. If they have Travis Kelce, they win that game. They're 2-0, but they didn't. But even in their second game, they weren't as impressive. I mean, their receivers did not. I mean, to Kadarius Toney, I don't know what's going on here, brother. I mean, you got to start catching some balls here, but I don't expect them to be as bad as they were in the first 2 weeks. I think they'll eventually start getting it. They're going to get Kelce back in there a little bit more healthy into the movement of things. So I always expect them to be in the mix. But number 4, I have the Eagles. The Eagles, not super impressive. I mean, not crazy dominant win, but you can't blame a team that's 2-0 right now. I mean, they've been somewhat closer games than I'm sure a lot of Eagles fans would like. Jalen Hurts hasn't really looked like the MVP guy that he was last season, but like you say, you can't knock 2-0. They look great. Their defense is still very good. They have a great receiving core, so they got to be my 4. Number 3, obviously, like we talked all through this video, it's either you have to have a Dolphins at least in that 1 to 3 range, and I have them there purely for the fact that it's still kind of early. A lot of these teams have been more playoff proven. I mean, compared to the Dolphins haven't won a playoff game since you were born. I mean, for Christ's sake, it's been a long time. We haven't been alive, basically. So that may be a bit of bias looking into it, but I think over the span of 2 weeks, they've been a spectacular team. Their offense have been great, and we just saw them be able to win against the Patriots, against a Bill Belichick, away from home. Very difficult, not super easy, and they were able to scrap and get over the line. Number 2, the Cowboys. Obviously, Cowboys started out this season beating the shit out of New York 70-10. I mean, God, they might be banned from the city of New York. It might be the worst thing to ever happen to the city of New York, the Cowboys, at the first of the 2 weeks. But their defense, obviously, out of this world. It's spectacular. Going against obviously a playoff team, dismantling them 40-0, the New York Giants, and then playing that Jets defense, a defense that is touted to be a top 5 around there, and to see Dak play good against said defense, it gives you some, hope. It gives you some little Cowboys fan, a little hope. Is this the year? But number one has to be just my consensus, and I think a lot of people consensus best team, the 49ers, just because they haven't had the statement. We haven't mentioned them at all this video, for the pure fact that, they haven't really blew a team up, 40-0 and done nothing, but they just have too much X factors, especially at the coaching level, at the defensive level, at the offensive level. They're just the most well-rounded team in football. We're seeing Brock Purdy just start to flourish more in this 49ers offense, and they just have so many weapons on offense. It's just that I look at this team and I don't know if there's any way to beat them other than injury, because I don't really see any weaknesses in them. I think that's the only reason they're not Super Bowl champions now, because literally every single quarterback they had in their locker room got injured. That's the only reason. If they can stay healthy, and Christian McCaffrey looks like a hell on wheels. I mean, this guy is playing at a supremely high level. Fingers crossed, knocking on wood. I don't want to see any more backs injured this year. I want it to be done, but unfortunately, that's how football is. But I think they're clear and ahead the best team in football.
Okay. So my list of the top 5 NFL teams through week 2. Starting at number 5, I'm going to go ahead and say the Baltimore Ravens. At number 4, I'm going to go ahead and say the Dallas Cowboys. At number 3, I'm going to say the Eagles. At number 2, I'm going to say my Miami Dolphins. And at number 1, have to be the San Francisco 49ers. And then quickly going through it here. At number 5, I was a little bit torn here. I wanted to say Kansas City. I told you before the video I was torn between 2 teams. It was between Kansas City and the Ravens. But I'm going to give the Ravens the benefit of the doubt here because of the fact they are 2-0. They did beat Joe Burrow in the Bengals. And obviously, being 2-0, you have to give them the credit. I liked what I've seen so far from Lamar Jackson. And I think that this team going forward, they still need to work through some of the kinks. But I think this team is going to be very good going forward. I don't necessarily see them as, my Super Bowl favorite or anything like that. But I think they're going to be right there in the mix. And I give them the edge because of the fact they're 2-0 over Kansas City. Then, number 4, the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, what an impressive start to the season we've seen. I think the only reason why I don't have them higher is because I just don't know if I can trust Dak. Yes, I liked what I saw against the New York Jets. I thought this was the Dak we need to see going forward. But like I said, I just don't know about Dak's consistency. But obviously, I love what I've seen from that defense. I think you can make the argument they have the best defense in the NFL. If not, it's top 2, top 3 at worst. This is how good this Cowboys defense is. This is what, is going to carry them going forward. Obviously, dismantling the city of New York through 2 games. I mean, they don't want to see Dallas roll into New York anytime soon because of how bad they've beaten them so far, both the Jets and the Giants. This Cowboys team, for the first time, I think you can say, they have the pieces in place to potentially be a true contender. But it just comes down to what version of Dak are we going to get? And because of the fact that I have question marks about Dak and the quarterback position, which is the most important position in football, that's why I'm not going to put them higher. But obviously, you could make the case like for you to put them higher at number 2. I have no issue with that. Number 3, the Eagles, the team that made the Super Bowl out of the NFC last year. I mean, look, I've loved what I've seen from them so far. Not necessarily as convincing as potentially the Cowboys, for example, but this defense from the Eagles is very, very good as well. Make no mistake about it. They haven't necessarily been getting talked about quite like the Cowboys or even the 49ers, but this Eagles defense is right there. And obviously, I trust Jalen Hurts when it matters most. Getting them to a Super Bowl last year, they have Devonta Smith. They have the weapons. I like this Eagles offense. I like the defense. Obviously, I trust the coach. I like this Eagles team. I trust them way more than I do the Cowboys, especially when it matters the most. So I think when these 2 teams play each other, I'm going to pick the Eagles. That's why I have the Eagles ahead of the Cowboys as of right now. Number 2, my Miami Dolphins. I mean, like I said, for me, the most impressive team in the NFL so far because there was question marks. What was Tua going to be like? Is he going to be injured? What's going to happen? Tyreek Hill, this defense, Vic Fangio coming in, so many question marks about this team. But all they've done so far is be the best offense in the league. And obviously beating Bill Belichick and this Patriots team in week 2. leaning on their defense, showing you that they can win in multiple different ways. This is why I have the Dolphins at number 2, ahead of the Eagles, ahead of the Cowboys. They've shown me that they can win in multiple different ways. I think they have a better offense than both of those two teams. If Tua is healthy, I think this Dolphins team can easily go all the way and win a Super Bowl. This is how good this team is. They have the weapons on offense. I trust Mike McDaniel. I love what he's doing with the scheme on offense. I think now that they have Vic Fangio, that's a Super Bowl level defensive coordinator. He can put the pieces together on this defense and get them clicking and make it all work. Still Jalen Ramsey to be added to this team. This Dolphins team has all the pieces to be a Super Bowl champion come February. No doubt in my mind, as long as they stay healthy, knocking on wood, of course. There we go. So moving to number 1. I mean, look, they might have not been as dominant as other teams, but the 49ers have to be the number 1 team in the NFL. This team is loaded. They have it all. There are no weaknesses on this team. They have one of the best coaches in the league. They have arguably the best defense in the league. And all of the weapons they have on offense, Brock Purdy is the perfect guy for this system. I mean, all he has to do is just be himself. All he has to do is just not turn the ball over. And it's exactly what he has been doing so far. I think, look, they might not have a top 5 quarterback. Brock Purdy is not a top 5 quarterback. But this 49ers team, they don't need a top 5 quarterback. They just need a guy who's going to manage the game, not turn the ball over. That's exactly what Brock Purdy is. When you have Christian McCaffrey playing at the level he's playing at right now, I mean, for me, the best back in football through 2 weeks. And then you have this defense. You have the coach. This team has no weaknesses. I mean, this 49ers team, it's like beating a dead horse here, but I've said it before. This team, to me, would have won the Super Bowl last year if their entire quarterback room didn't get injured in the NFC Championship game. And for me, I think that they are the favorites for the Super Bowl as of right now. As long as no injuries happen, hopefully Christian McCaffrey stays healthy, everyone stays healthy on that defense. If that happens, for me, this 49ers team is a little bit above everybody else in the NFL. It's like them, and then everyone else is kind of like right here. Everyone else, there's no disrespect to the rest of the teams, but the Niners are just a little bit better. That's kind of where I view them.
I think just because when you go through that list, I think each team has a clear flaw, I think. And when you go to the 49ers, it's not, I mean, the only flaw you can really say is, maybe they have too many injury-prone players. That's literally their only flaw. Look at the Cowboys. The questions are Dak. You look at the Chiefs. The question of the Chiefs are the receivers. You look at the Dolphins. You question their experience in the playoffs. And then you look at a team like the Eagles. It's a bit of that experience as well. They're not really used to getting into those moments. The 49ers are. They've been to a Super Bowl very recently, and they were very close to going to another Super Bowl, even last year, if it didn't come down to injury. So they just have that mixture of experience and just, having almost being top 3 in everything, in offense and defense. They have it all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think that the Niners, as long as, injuries, don't derail their season, I think this team is destined to potentially be lifting the Lombardi come February. But obviously, it's the NFL. It's just week 2. There's still a lot of football to be played, a lot of things to be decided. So we'll have to go ahead and see on that. But, we'll see how the top 5 list develops over time because, teams are going to lose. Things are going to happen. Injuries are going to happen. But as of right now, for me, that's my top 5, and that's your top 5. So you have to let us know whose top 5 you agree with. What would you change? And I think we can go ahead and move forward into the next question. And obviously, could potentially be one of the teams we just talked about. But who is the most surprising team that you've seen so far in the NFL through week 2?
Well, this is actually a team we have not talked about because I think the most surprising team, without a doubt, is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This team had so many questions going into it because obviously the departure of the greatest player of all time, Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr., going into a season without him, out of the Brady era, and you replaced him with Baker Mayfield. My God, who knew what was going to happen here? It was like, is this going to be just, Baker that's kind of like, he just looks like he doesn't have it. He can't hack it in this league anymore. And my God, they wrote him off, but he hasn't wrote back. Look, through 2 weeks, Baker Mayfield has played great. I mean, I'm looking at this game versus the Chicago Bears. And I get it's the Chicago Bears here, but the throw for 317 and with 1 touchdown, it's impressive no matter what. In this league, to throw over 300 yards is always going to be impressive. And the fact that it's Baker Mayfield, because a lot of people expect this from Baker Mayfield just because they're like, oh, since he left Cleveland, he's a bust. I mean, that's just what he is. He's a draft bust. He shouldn't have ever been as high as he was because he just didn't turn out. And now you look at his situation compared to what they have right now in Cleveland. I mean, Deshaun Watson playing, you compare his numbers to Baker. I mean, look, it might be too early, but, that we might have to have a conversation soon. If it keeps going like this, we might have to sit down and have a conversation here because Baker is fitting exactly every single piece that this Buccaneers team needs, because it's the same thing before Brady, that this Bucs team, all they need is a decent quarterback. That's all they need. And they could be in that mix. I think they have a very high chance of being a little frisky wild card team because, look, they have that same core, that they still have most of that same core that won them a Super Bowl. I mean, they have still the weapons on offense. That they still have a lot of these guys. They have Shaq Barrett, a guy who was a defensive monster, who can get you sacks. I mean, they just have overall still a very good team. Like I said, most of that core that won them a Super Bowl. All they need is that quarterback to just, not be a top 10, not be a top 5, not be a top 3, just be a middle of the pack, a guy that can give you these flashes flashes like that of brilliance. And you might be able to get that from Baker because, look, we saw a little bit from week 1 that, he's starting to get a chirp. He's starting to get the feel back of what it's like to be a top quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And I think overall the Buccaneers fans should be very happy.
Yeah, I think I have to agree with you. The Buccaneers are no doubt my most surprising team because, look, they had all the question marks in the world coming into this season. Obviously, no more Tom Brady, the greatest player to ever, throw the football, ever play in the NFL. I mean, obviously, it's going to be very difficult to fill those shoes. Obviously, even with Brady last year, the Bucs were not that good. Let's just be honest. They weren't that good. So there were so many question marks. I don't think anyone expected the Bucs to be 2-0. Yes, they got Baker Mayfield, but we were not sure what Baker Mayfield was anymore. Is he a decent quarterback? Is he a top quarterback? Is he trash? Is it time for him to go to the XFL? We didn't know what to expect about with Baker Mayfield, but all he's done through 2 weeks is show that he can still be a top quarterback in this league. Through 2 games, 490 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, but the most impressive thing for me, 0 interceptions, 0 fumbles. That's turnover-free football. When you think Baker Mayfield, you don't think turnover-free football, but through 2 games, no turnovers. That's the most impressive thing, and that's the reason why I have to say he has been so impressive so far to me because I didn't expect that at all. I didn't expect this Bucs team to be 2-0. Yes, they played the Bears, but beating the Vikings, that's a very tough matchup. That's going to be, look, the Vikings, they are also 0-2 now, but the Vikings are still a good team. They still have Kirk Cousins. They still have Justin Jefferson. They're still solid. I still expect them to be better. They're not really, true 0-2 team. They're not necessarily at the same level as the Bears, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But I look at this and I say, Baker Mayfield, I have now, a bit of faith in him going forward. So now I can kind of agree with you to say this Bucs team, if Baker Mayfield keeps playing on this level, they could be easily a wild card team. In this division, then maybe they even are able to win the division. This is because they still have a lot of those same pieces. All they need is Baker Mayfield to play at the level he's playing right now. Obviously, the big thing is consistency. Is he going to be able to keep this up? But I would have said the same thing after week 1, and look what he did in week 2. He arguably, he played better. He played better. Not even arguably, he just played better.
He just did.
He threw for considerably more yards. His completion percentage was better. Only 1 touchdown, but they didn't necessarily need him to throw for all the touchdowns. And it kind of reiterates the same point. They don't need him to be Tom Brady. They don't need him to be, the number 1 pick. They don't need him to be that guy. They just need him to play turnover-free football. They need him to not, make the team lose because they have a solid defense. They have good weapons. He just needs to put the team in a position, be a bit of a game manager. And I think he could be a better version of a game manager. So for me, I agree with you. The Bucs have been the most surprising team so far. And I think based on what I've seen, I think they very easily could be a fringe wild card team and a team that you don't necessarily want to face because they still have a lot of those same pieces that won them a Super Bowl. And if Baker Mayfield can continue to play like this, he's getting that swagger back. He's getting that confidence back. And for a guy like Baker Mayfield, if he gets that fully back, if he gets into the swing of things, I still think he has it in him. I always kind of thought that in the back of my head. He still got it. So I think maybe this change of scenery in Tampa, having the opportunity, this was what he needed. And, this Bucs team, if Mayfield keeps playing like this, I think they're going to be, they're going to be tough.
I mean, it's that whole division they're in right now. It's a bit surprising. I mean, right there, they're three other 2-0 teams, Atlanta and the Saints. And it's kind of other than the Carolina Panthers are 0-2, but I mean, it's kind of surprising. Kind of funny.
That's why I'm saying, like, I don't think there's a clear front runner in that division. So if Mayfield keeps playing like this, I think this team easily could win the division. And then you're talking about them getting a home playoff game, and who knows at that point.
Who would have thought?
I don't think that this team, they're not Super Bowl contenders, but I think that they have a chance to actually, make the playoffs, potentially, get maybe even a playoff win. If Baker keeps playing at this level.
If you would have told the fans that there's actually a real possibility you guys would be in the playoffs again, I mean, shit, they'll take it.
They could have a better season. Yeah. They could have a better season than they did last year.
They could have.
With Brady. I mean, everybody expected, post Brady era for this team to be potentially, in contention for the number 1 pick, tanking. And now we're talking about potentially having a home playoff game and winning their division.
Yeah, I mean, they take it.
You have to give credit to their front office for, taking the chance on Baker Mayfield, because there was a lot of question marks, who was going to be the starter in the offseason. And they gave Baker Mayfield the chance, and he won the starting job. And he's taking the chance and running with it. So I give him a lot of credit for that. And like I said, I still think he has it in him. I think he's proved that through 2 games. So now it just comes down to consistency. And for some reason, I just have a feeling in my gut he's going to be able to keep this going. And I'm rooting for Baker Mayfield. I've always liked Baker Mayfield.
I always liked Baker Mayfield. Fucking hell.
But so there is, one final question. I think we've touched on it a little bit. So the answer might be something we've talked about a little bit, but the most disappointing team in the league so far through 2 games.
I was really torn between 2 teams. And those 2 teams were the Broncos and the Chargers. But just for the pure fact that I didn't really expect too much from the Broncos because of what the travesty that I watched last season, I'm just going to lean with the Chargers, because there's just been something, a different level of disappointment, just because we know the Chargers have all the pieces. I mean, this was a team 2 seasons ago. You had them going to the championship game. I mean, I don't think you had them going to the Super Bowl, but you had them very close, because look, the Chargers have a great roster. They're a very good team. I mean, they have a guy with Justin Herbert who he's not the best quarterback in the league, but he's pretty good. I mean, he's not bad. He's a guy that can definitely give you flashes of, like a top 7, top 6 talent. But to me, it comes down to Brandon Staley. I think it's a miracle that he did not get fired in the offseason, because I'm just not sure how he keeps his job after blowing a 27-point lead versus the Jaguars, versus Trevor Lawrence in his first playoff run, his first little playoff experience. That can't happen. That's inexcusable, especially when you have a roster in the Chargers. They're just not responding well enough. And it's a shame, because you can't have that much talent and underperform to this level, because we all expected we expect a lot from the Chargers. I mean, look, seeing what Tua's doing in Miami right now, those are the most of the 2 that are constantly by, Herbert and Tua. You see what one's doing right now. So one's flourishing and the other one's 0-2. It's unacceptable. And I mean, look, I think it was very close, but I have to lean heavily with the Chargers.
I've just changed my mind here, because I just thought about it, and I said, look, I'm going to be honest here. If you watched the entire video up to this point, I was going to say the Bengals. But, you can at least make some excuses for them. They might, Joe Burrow, he might be injured. There's issues there going on. But the Chargers, they just have no excuse. I don't even want to agree with you. I really don't. But I feel like I don't really have any other option here. The Chargers, they are the most disappointing team so far in the league. Okay, look, Justin Herbert, he's supposed to be that guy. Supposed to be better than Tua. Supposed to be, an elite quarterback in this league. And I'm not blaming him for being, the catalyst of the 0-2 start. It's not like it's all his fault. But I'm saying they have all the pieces. They have an amazing offense. They have all the weapons. They have Justin Herbert. They have a very good defense. And I look at this Chargers team, and like you said, I do not know how Brandon Staley kept his job last season. I mean, this has been the clear issue with this Chargers team. And I said it. This team cannot go far. They cannot be the team that they want to be with him at the helm. It's not going to happen. I don't understand how you can choke that bad in the playoffs last season and still keep your job. It's a miracle. I mean, this guy should be getting on his knees every night and thanking the Lord that he somehow has a job. Because for me, he's lucky to even be in the NFL at all. I'm talking about even as a coordinator. How does he even have a job? This guy he's not a leader of men. And for me, he is the main reason why this Chargers team is where they are. Because this team has all the pieces. If you give, a coach, let's just take, for example, let's say they fired Brandon Staley in the offseason and they got Sean Payton, who ultimately went to Denver. If Sean Payton was the coach of this Chargers team, I'm sitting there and we're not talking about them being 0-2. This is the reality. In my mind, we're not talking about them as an 0-2 team if they have Sean Payton. They have an elite coach, but they have Brandon Staley. And I look, if I'm them, if I have any chance of salvaging the season, I'm firing him now. I'm firing him right now. I'm not letting another day go by wasting this roster, wasting a minute of Justin Herbert's rookie contract with Brandon Staley at the helm. I'm not doing it. I do not understand how he has a job, and I don't understand how he still has a job if this team is 0-2. I don't understand because this team is too talented to be 0-2. Yes, they played Miami, who is a very tough team, but this team is too talented to be 0-2. You almost just lose your words because you cannot be losing to the Titans. You just can't do it. The Titans are not that good.
In a close game, those are things you lean on the better team. I mean, arguably, compared to the Dolphins and compared to the Titans, the Chargers, man for man, roster by roster, Chargers are better. They are better. I think player for player, the Chargers are better than the Dolphins, but the Dolphins play better. Mm-hmm. It's a bit,
that comes down to coaching. That comes down to coaching. I mean, Mike McDaniel is so much of a better coach than Brandon Staley. I mean, Mike McDaniel, if he was coaching Justin Herbert might be putting up, record numbers. I mean, numbers. Tua and Justin Herbert, they're both phenomenal. They're both great. So, I think if you give Mike McDaniel Justin Herbert, he's going to be putting up similar numbers to Tua. And if you put Tua on the Chargers, he's going to be decent. But
with that head coach, I don't think you're not be doing
that's the point that I'm trying to make here. So if the Chargers are a serious organization, they're getting rid of Brandon Staley and they're saying, you know what, let's bring in anybody else. Because they're wasting this talent, they're wasting this roster. And ultimately, it's important to, not necessarily waste the season of Herbert. Because if I'm him, I mean, I just don't know. I mean, maybe
you can't be happy with this stuff.
Exactly. You just can't be happy. You know what I mean?
Especially with the expectations you have. And I'm kind of surprised that I know you had an inkling towards the Bengals and the Chargers, but nothing much to say about the Broncos. I mean, I think there's a lot of media and a lot of people looking into it. Oh, look how Sean Payton is talking about this new how they're gonna do things. He's because Sean Payton is a very respected coach and he does take no bullshit. This is a guy that is gonna hold Russell Wilson to the fire, but we're starting to see that Russell Wilson quite literally it might be it. It just might be time to start tanking. I see Bronco fans saying it's time to tank because they've moved heaven and earth to get Russell Wilson, but it's not working out because he just doesn't look the same. And it's disappointing because we expected different. I'll close it out in just a second, but it's just we're kind of expecting a little bit too much for Sean Payton to completely transform this team when your quarterback isn't playing to level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can put the Broncos on the same level of disappointing as the Chargers, for example, because coming off of last season, yes, they got Sean Payton, but we knew this Broncos team wasn't the best. I mean, we were unsure about who Russell Wilson really is. Is he that guy anymore? To be fair, I think through 2 games, you can say he's been better than he has been, last season, but I still don't think he's the same Russell Wilson of old. And, magically, I don't think Sean Payton was going to make this team into a contender overnight. So I don't think you can put them on the same level of disappointing as the Chargers, for example, because you look at the Chargers, they have the roster. I just said, if you give Sean Payton that roster, and we're talking about Super Bowl contenders, this Broncos team, they have a solid roster. Should they be a decent team? Yes, I still think they will be a decent team. And I think they've been a bit unlucky, to be 0-2. I mean, they lost by 1 to the Raiders, and then they lose by 2 to the Commanders. And ultimately, they had a chance at the end They got the Hail Mary and then they missed the two. Just unfortunate. Things happen. I still think with Sean Payton, I don't think they're necessarily going to be 0-17. You know what I mean? They're not going to be you're not going to be that bad.
Mhm.
But I just don't think you can put them on the same level as the Chargers. I mean, yes, you would like for them to be maybe 1-1 right now. They've been in both of those games, but I don't know. I just don't think I expected that much out of them, so that's why I don't think they're that disappointing per se.
Yeah, I mean that could be. That's why I mean I really mentioned the Broncos and other things because we had seen just how poor they were, but there was a lot of push toward that Sean Payton could transform because if anybody was gonna do it, it was gonna be Sean Payton, and unfortunately, I think there's not really much you can do with the roster right now.
Yeah, I just think it's going to take a little bit longer for the Broncos to be the team that they want to be. I mean, I don't know. I don't necessarily think after what I've seen that they should be saying let's just throw in the towel on the season because
I've seen Bronco fans say fuck it, let's take, bro. I don't know.
I know
it's a mixture
Caleb
of
Williams.
things out there.
I know
Man.
Caleb Williams would be appealing. Obviously,
make
looking for
anybody
the
tank.
future. Yeah, it would make anybody tank. But if I was the Broncos, I think based on what I've seen, I don't think Russell Wilson has been that bad.
It's just he has these moments where you just say like what like it's just he would never do that. Like the Russell Wilson that everybody knows, he would never do that.
Yeah,
and it's just like I don't know. I guess I feel differently because I expected them to be good last season. And
you did. Yeah.
I think I had them finishing second in this shit or some shit. I had them really high last season, but I was sadly disappointed. So
Yeah. I just don't think they're quite on the same level as the Chargers in terms of expectations because I mean the Chargers they have the talent to be a Super Bowl level team. So I think that's
I believe so they do.
Exactly. So but I think it's an interesting argument to be made for them. So that's kind of that. But obviously that was the week 2 roundup. So you're gonna have to let us know in the comments down below what you thought about week 2. What did you think the biggest takeaways through 2 weeks of the NFL season are? If you have any answers to the questions that were different than ours, maybe you have a different, most impressive team, most disappointing quarterback, whatever. Let us know in the comments down below. Love to hear y'all's perspective. But I think without further ado, we can wrap this one up.
Let's get out of here.
So I'm Zach.
I'm G.
And we'll see you all next time for another video on the channel. Peace.